in a second. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Black Men Screaming. My name is Maurice Carver, and I'm Executive Director of Stride Incorporated and the host of your show. Joining me in conversation and co-hosting the show is Mr. Charles Orette, CEO of Positive Expectations. And we have the pleasure of presenting Dr. Maulana Karenga. Dr. Karenga is professor and chair of the Department of Africana Studies at California State University, Long Beach. Dr. Karenga is the creator of the Pan-African cultural holiday, Kwanzaa, and the Nguzo Saba, the Seven Principles, and author of the authoritative text titled Kwanzaa, a celebration of family, community, and culture. Dr. Karenga, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation, Maurice. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to our conversation.
Well, we look forward to having you here. It was a great honor that you would take the time, and especially before the month of where the show actually is going to air on we're doing this live, but it's going to actually air in February for Black History Month, and so this is our celebration. And you are a national treasure to us, Dr. Karenga. We don't want you to ever think that you are not, and it's a blessing just to have you. And we want to also acknowledge Mrs. Karenga. She is a blessing also.
Yes, Timoy, she's a blessing. She's a blessing to me. She's a blessing to our organization. She's a blessing to the movement. She's a blessing to our people. So I'm very glad that she is my companion in all things good, beautiful, and sacred. And that's a beautiful thing. And who I am now is part of what we've built together. So thank you very much for that compliment. And I'll pass it on to her. Certainly she's listening, but I'll say it again.
Okay. Well, the first question I have is, there's been a lot of conversation and activity about resistance and the denial of restricting our voting rights. And yet some people wonder if voting has any value given the state of things in this country. What is your opinion on this?
Yes. Appreciating what you said. If I understand it correctly, Maury, we have to look at voting seriously. A lot of times when we look at voting, we're looking at a candidate, right? And so we're talking about voting for a candidate, but we must vote for the vision we have of society and the world. And we must ask ourselves, even if we got two bad candidates, we got to ask ourselves, which gives us more space to practice the liberational struggle that we're going to engage to. We know that we're not saved by voting, that salvation does not lie in other people's hands, that in the final analysis, we are our own liberators, and a people that cannot save itself is lost forever. And so no matter how numerous or sincere our allies are, those who would be free must strike the first, the final, and decisive blow. That's what we have to start out with. So we're voting for a vision, we're voting for a contact that's most suitable given the circumstance we're in, right? Well, we got wild, bad actors, okay? The question is, what is most likely to be the context we can get more achieved, right? And so we vote also because of what it means to us as a people. First, it is a hard-won right and responsibility, right? We struggled for this, right? Can't walk away from this. We can't walk away from the work of Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer. Nana, when I say Nana, that's a title of honor, of respect. So we can't walk away from the struggle of Nana Fannie Lou Hamer, Nana Ella Baker, Nana Dying Death, Nana Joseph Lowry, Nana C.T. Vivian, Nana Martin Luther King Jr., Nana Coretta Scott King, and all the other ones. You know, it's so many, right? So what do we look like walking away from that? We have a right to speak our own special culture truth. We have a right to all public space and wealth in this country, and we cannot even touch it if we don't struggle for it. They will not give us anything. The oppressor will not concede. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will, right? So it's struggle, he said. Second, this is a legacy. It's not only a hard-won right and responsibility, We fought for that right. Remember, we fought for the right to vote, to speak our own special culture truth, to participate in every decision that affects our destiny desert life. And we have a responsibility to exercise that right once we fought. And this is a legacy, a hard-won legacy, also a legacy of suffering and sacrifice, of death, of loss of life and livelihood, of loss of freedom. How can we turn our back on that and be talking about, oh, I don't like this person? Who cares whether you like that person? You can't get hugged. We're not talking about hugging. We're talking about a power struggle in this country.
Yes.
Right? And we're talking about what kind of society we want. We want a just and good society. We have struggled around two things in this country: the struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves. And we can't free ourselves unless we be ourselves. But we can't fully be ourselves until we fully free ourselves. So we're in struggle all the time. And Malcolm X tells us that wherever Black people are, there's a battle line. That whether you're in the North or the South, the East or the West, you and I are in a country that is a battle line for everyone. So we have to understand that. We get up in the morning understanding we're at war. We're in a struggle. Even if people don't want to be at war, they're in a war. And so they must, in fact, struggle for themselves, struggle for the past to continue the legacy that we're talking about, and struggle to push the legacy forward. Third, this is critical space. I hinted at it earlier, I referred to it. Public space is critical space. It's a space for policy making and resource allocation. And we have a right to those resources, as I said before, a right to all public wealth and space. And we're paying these taxes. And these people are taking our money and giving welfare to corporations. And corporations are making Black people and other poor people feel funny being poor when they're in fact impoverishing them, right? By feeding from, as they used to say, feeding from the public trial, because it's like greedy pigs, right? So they used to say that all the time. So I don't want to push it too far, but I think it's an apt analysis or an apt metaphor in some cases. So the critical part. The next thing we have to do is refuse to collaborate. Another reason we should vote is that it means we refuse to collaborate in our own oppression. One of the greatest powers in the world is the power of the dominant society to define reality and make us accept it even when it's to our disadvantage, telling us what is good and wrong, right, or even what is ugly and beautiful, telling us what is righteous and unrighteous. How can these people instruct us? How can our oppressor be our teacher without our being deformed in the process? Our oppressor cannot be our teacher. We must speak our own special culture truth, make our own unique contribution to how this society is radically reconstructed. So this is important for us to not collaborate in our own oppression. It is wrong to collaborate in your own oppression, right? And the final reason that we have to vote is because voting is another battlefield. And you can see how important it is by how many changes the white man and the racists go through, okay, the white racist goes through in order to deny our vote, passing laws in at least 19 states against us voting, making it outlawed to give people water in line. First, they said we didn't vote. Then they try to stop us from voting. And what we have to do is not let this stop us. We can't just sit on the side and say, oh, how could they do that? I know it's very difficult for us as a people and for any people in the world, but especially for Black people who just want to be free and to live their lives in good and meaningful ways. And it's hard to accept that people will hate you and you've never done anything to them. That's why Dr. C.T. Vivian, C.T. Vivian, asked the white sheriff. And the sheriff knocked him down. He's just trying to vote, right? This is supposed to be an American thing you do, right? And the sheriff knocks him down. He gets up in defiance and he says to the white man, what kind of people are y'all? What kind of people are y'all? And that's constantly a question for Black people when they confront white racists. What kind of people are y'all? And what kind of the people that silently support it, sitting on the sideline? if you don't act, you are actually acting for oppression. There is in this fight, in this struggle for justice, there can be no neutrality, right? As Bishop Tutu, Archbishop Tutu, Archbishop Tutu said, if you are not fighting against evil and injustice, you're actually collaborating in oppression. You can't stand on the side. In fact, the less you do means the less opposition the oppressor has. And your silence and your inactivity becomes something he doesn't have to deal with. He should not sleep well in the context of injustice. He has no right to security if we don't have justice. That's what we said in the 60s, right? No justice, no peace. And Dr. King, Martin Luther King said from the Birmingham jail, you know, y'all want peace without justice. He said, but peace is not simply the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. So if we want peace, we have to have a just peace. And there can be no peace until there's justice. So we vote to make a just and good society, but we fight on other battlefields too. This is a critical battlefield, but it's not the only battlefield.
Yes, Dr. Karenga, very illuminating. You are the creator of the Pan-African holiday Kwanzaa and its 7 principles. Share with us why and how you created this new worldwide celebration.
I created Kwanzaa in the 60s. After I left, I was working on my doctorate at UCLA, and we left the university wanting to join the movement. I wanted to create something that was collective and that benefited the people, our people, right? And that helped to continue the struggle, that helped to widen and deepen the struggle and intensify the struggle and ground the struggle. And so I'm aware of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. Mary McLeod Bethune said, knowledge is a prime need of the hour. And he said, but we will want to know, what are you going to do with your knowledge? And she said, it's up to us who have knowledge to share that knowledge. She said, we must discover the dawn and then share that with the youth and the masses of our people who need it most. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create something of lasting value, something that aided the struggle in its move forward. It's awesome move forward. That's transforming the country in a way that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson couldn't imagine and certainly could not have accepted. I mean, I'm just telling you what we did. Sometimes we don't realize what we've done, but we're in the midst of that, right? So I want to build an institution. So I created Kwanzaa for 3 basic reasons. I created in the midst of the Black freedom movement. So I created first as an act of freedom, right? I don't ask anybody, can we have this? I don't go, and we don't go to the city, we don't go to the state, we don't go to the federal government and ask them to declare a holiday. We declare it, right? That's an act of freedom right there. And we declare it based on our own culture. That's an act of freedom. To think free, right? That's an act of freedom.
Yes.
And to reaffirm Black, to sacralize Black, to say it's sacred, right? That we are bearers of dignity and divinity as our ancestors along the Nile taught in the sacred text called Husia. That we are bearers of dignity and divinity. We have an inborn, inherent worthiness. And we are due the highest level of respect. So I created this holiday also as an instrument of freedom, to raise consciousness, to ground people in their own culture, to reaffirm them in their own beauty and sacredness and goodness and power and potential. That's what Kwanzaa is, a celebration of Black people, right? Kwanzaa is a celebration of family, community, and culture, Black family, community, and culture, right? So when people be asking, can white people, and that's who they're asking, but they're not asking for Native Americans or Chicano, Latinos, or Asian. They're asking for white people, right? Can anybody celebrate Kwanzaa? No, it's not the question, can they celebrate Kwanzaa? It's a question, can they celebrate Black people? Because that's what Kwanzaa is about, celebrating Black people, the family, community, and culture of Black people, and Black people, of course, themselves. So, and then finally, after I created as an act of freedom and an instrument of freedom, I created as a celebration in the midst of freedom and as a celebration of the freedom to choose and to act and to create in our own image and interest. And so I created Kwanzaa for three basic reasons. One, to reaffirm our rootedness in African culture, because we had been lifted out of our own history and culture by the Holocaust of enslavement and made a footnote and forgotten casualty in other people's culture. They had actually reduced us to an object of work or labor, objects of sex, and objects of entertainment, right? They created culture and social death for us, right? And we're still struggling to escape the effects of that. That's why the argument for reparation is so important, and hopefully we'll get to that. So I created it first to reaffirm Africanness. We're the only people in the world. That's people want to argue we lose our identity by taking a boat ride. No matter how long the Chinese been here, they still call Chinese, Japanese, same thing. Everybody else is called what they are. Black people, first they used to call us African to insult us, but our first major institution, our large institution, was named African, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, but they made us feel guilty about it. So we started calling ourselves colored folks, right? Then Negroes. Then in the 60s, we went back and said, we're an African people. We're African American. You get your identity from two sources: where you came from, your historical origin, and your social location. Our origin is from Africa. We're not from Sweden or Germany, right? We're from Africa. And our social location is America. So we're African Americans, right? So we're returning to our history. That's an act of freedom. Amilcar Cabral, Nana Amilcar Cabral said that part of, at the center of the liberation struggle is the struggle to return to our own history. We got to return to our own history and culture so we can speak our own special culture truth, make our own unique contribution to the forward flow of human history. Second, I created Kwanzaa to give us a time when all over the world, Black people could come together and reaffirm the bonds between them as African people. And you know that more than any other time during the year, Africans all over the world, on every continent, hear what I said, on every continent in the world, throughout the world, African community, celebrate Kwanzaa. Think about being African, the awesome meaning of being African. For example, what does it mean to be the elders of humanity? What does it mean to be not only the creators and bringers into being of humanity, but the people who built the first human civilizations, the great civilizations who taught and introduced some of the basic disciplines of human knowledge in the Nile Valley, that taught Jew, Gentile, Hittite, Hyksos, Roman, Greek, Persian, Libyan. They all came to learn. They called Egypt the light of the world, the navel of the world, and finally, the temple of the world. The light of the world because of the knowledge production, the navel of the world and the womb of the world because of how much creativity they brought to the world. And finally, the temple of the world because of their deep spirituality and ethic. And so we talk about things like that. Zulu culture, Yoruba culture, the ancient Egyptian, all these cultures, right? I just mentioned some. Sometimes I don't like to just mention one because it seems like I'm leaving out some other, but I'm just telling you the ones that we work with in our organization, us. And us is a reflection of the teachings I'm giving. Us, we chose the name us first to reaffirm our rootedness in and commitment to the people, us African people. Second, us means us as distinct from them, the oppressor. We're not like them. This is us, not them. And then third, to reaffirm, we said us in order to reaffirm our commitment to communitarian values and practices, values that stress and reinforce family, community, and culture that teaches us that we are in relationship, right? That we come into being in relationship, and that we must understand ourselves in relationship and understand that we are born in relationship, right? We come into the world with relationship, and every relation is an obligation, and we have to live up to that obligation and responsibility. So we talk about being African. So what does it mean, I said, in this time when we're talking, to be the fathers and mothers of humanity and human civilization? What does it mean to be the sons and daughters of the Holocaust of enslavement? What does it mean to be the authors and heirs of the reaffirmation of our Africanness and our radical struggle tradition and social justice tradition in the 60s? And what does it mean now to be the moral and a key moral and social vanguard in this country, who has not only won space for themselves, not only improved their own condition in their struggle for freedom, but expanded the realm of freedom for everybody else, right? Let's look at it. That's why people borrow our moral vocabulary and our moral vision and pose our struggle as a model, right? Other people of color, Native Americans, Latinos, Asians, right? Women, gays and lesbians, right? Trans people, all of these people, disabled people, senior people, they say just like the blacks when they're making a case for themselves. Let's give me if I'm wrong, right? We become the model, not just in this country, not just in this country, but in Africa, in Asia, you know, in the Chinese Democrat, in the world, in Asia, the Democratic War, in the Eastern European struggle, in the Palestinian struggle for liberation, in the Arab Spring. They sang our songs. Raised our battle cries. So we are key people in a key country, and we have to take ourselves seriously in this struggle. And Kwanzaa brings us together to talk about things like that. The final reason I created Kwanzaa, after reaffirming our Africanness and bringing us together, to meditate on the awesome meaning of being African in the world, was also to introduce and reaffirm the importance of communitarian values, values that stress and strengthen family, community, and culture, and the collective. And of course, the hub and hinge on which the holiday Kwanzaa turns are the Nguzo Saba, which is Swahili for the 7 principles. And those principles, first in Swahili, and then in English, are umoja, unity, kujichagulia, self-determination, ujima, collective working responsibility, ujamaa, cooperative economic, nia, purpose, kuumba, creativity, and imani, faith. Those are 7 values that if we were to practice just most of the time, our whole world would change, right? If we could just do them some of the time and with some consistency, there would be significant change. So we say, this is a way of life. This is a way to move forward and upward in our awesome moral through human history and toward freedom and an expanded conception of ourselves and to achieve African and human good and the well-being of the world.
Carter G. Woodson said something that I thought was very important. He said that every man has 2 educators, the one that is given the education, the one that is given to him, and the other in which he gives to himself. And that's why he stressed so much the importance of Black History Month. And so my question is, why is it important to celebrate and study Black history?
If we listen to our ancestors, we understand. If we know the beginning well, the proverbial teaching is, if we know the beginning well, the end will not trouble us. So we start at the beginning, and history is the beginning. That is why Nana Malcolm X, Haji Malcolm X says, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And so we study history for several reasons. One, to learn its lessons. That's again why Nana Malcolm X said, of all our studies, history is best prepared to reward, best qualified rather, to reward our research. Second, we study history in order to absorb its spirit of human possibility. That is what the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Nana Marcus Garvey means when he says, look at it, what humans have done, humans can do. So when we look at our history and the awesome march to all kinds of obstacles, who else could have survived the Holocaust of enslavement, savagery of segregation, continuing systemic racism, and not be totally broken? Some of us were, but guess what? Even though they outlawed love, they outlawed learning, right? In less than 100 years, we came out of the Holocaust of enslavement and created world-class literature second to none, right? So I talk about our human possibility and our achievement, and history gives me evidence of our refusal to be defeated or dispirited or diverted from what we know is good. I like that about our people. You know, now I think sometimes when people be listening to me, they, oh, he's just praising black. Hey, if I don't do it, who will? European, the dominant society teaches us a pathological language. So we start from a deficit model of black people. Why are black people killing each other? Why are white people killing? They're the ones who started all the wars. They're the ones, the whole world war. The world is at war for them. They're the war makers. Calling this the Wild Wild West. It wasn't wild until they came, right? So let's be honest, right? See, so
Yes.
don't blame history on me, comrade. You got a problem. They got a problem to hate people that haven't done anything to them, to kill and wipe out millions and tens of millions of Native Americans and simply call it manifest destiny and the way westward and all that kind of stuff. Hey, so they can't even talk to me about these kind of things. So one of the things I want you to see is that we understand that, that and absorb that spirit of possibility. When I get a chance, I want to talk about Nana Harriet Tubman. This is a 200-year birthday celebration coming, and I want you to see what is possible. How Black people imagine possibility and the impossible. It reminds me of the beautiful things that, first, I like these three people: Howard Thurman, Gwen Brooks, and Nana Burrs. So Howard Thurman says we're storm riders. And that's something beautiful about being able to ride the storm and remain intact. And Gwen Brooks said to us in a poem, we conduct our blooming in the whip, in the noise and whip of the whirlwind. Listen to that. We bloom in the whirlwind. We conduct our blooming in the noise and whip of the whirlwind. And Nana Burrs, I should say Nana Gwen Brooks and Nana Howard Thurman. Nana Gwen Brooks said, Nanny Burroughs says to us, we specialize in the wholly impossible. That's when we study history, we learn that. We don't study history and we just see what's happening out in the streets of Chicago or LA or Miami, right? Or some other place, right? New York. We might say, oh man, what's happening with us? But the question is, not negatively just what's happening to us, but what's happening to us positively, and what has happened to us positively, and what has happened to us negatively, and how did we get over? That's what a song said. My soul looks back and wonder how I got over. But that's because of the spirit of possibility that we have, a deep grounding in our faith tradition. Rescue me if I'm wrong, right?
No,
You're
right.
believing that in the final analysis, as Donna King said, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. That faith that in the final analysis, Maat would triumph, righteousness would triumph over evil, has sustained us in ways that, other things would not. And so I think it's important for us to say. Third, we study history, not only to learn its lessons, absorb its spirit, but also to extract and emulate its models of human excellence and achievement. Nana Mary McLeod Bethune said, we are heirs and custodians of a great legacy. And we say, therefore, we must bear the burden and glory of that legacy with strength, dignity, and determination. I repeat, we're the fathers and mothers of humanity, but also human civilization, right? We're the ones who stood up first, spoke the first human truth, introduced some of the basic disciplines of human knowledge, right? Taught the world what was good and beautiful, right? And I'm saying that we have the oldest ethical and spiritual texts in the world. We got to read. That's what I did my second doctorate in, Maat, the moral idea in ancient Egypt, to demonstrate our contribution to the world. Like, for example, how we created the concept that humans are in the image of God. This is 2140 BC, before anyone said that. And that was to give preciousness to the human being, no matter how poor or whatever state the person might be in, right? Yeah, this is important. And then we developed a parallel concept called Shepesu, which is dignity and inherent worthiness that has three characteristics. This is all from ancient Africa in the Nile Valley, right? The Shepesu has three inherent worthiness. We're born with, nobody gives this to us. We're born with this. right? And so it has three characteristics. It's transcendent, it's equal in all, and it's inalienable. Transcendent means it's beyond all other identities we might have: race, class, gender, sexuality, age, ability, religion, nationality, etc. Second, it's equal in all, no hierarchy, no superior or inferior people. And finally, it's inalienable. Nobody can take it away from. We don't lose it by changing social status or by somebody capturing us and enslaving us. We don't lose that, right? We don't lose our dignity, right? That's our inherent worthiness, right? And we can't even give it away. So, and then the final reason we study history, not only to learn this lesson, to absorb its spirit and to extract and emulate its models of human excellence and achievement, but fourth, we study to practice the morality of remembrance. Nana Fanny Lou Hamer said there are two things we should care about: never to forget where we came from, and always praise the bridges that carried us over. And so we study history to find these bridges, to give them worthy attention, as Carter G. Woodson taught us, right? See, he thought that if we would, he thought two things would happen if we studied our history. One, that white people would lose their ignorance and hostility toward us, right? Because he understood that history and humanity are dialectically linked. And the greater the knowledge and appreciation you have of people's history, the greater the knowledge and appreciation you have of their humanity. And likewise, the greater ignorance and disappreciation you have of their history, the greater ignorance and disappreciation you have of their humanity. And that's why Europe tried to claim all history so it could claim all humanity and say, y'all haven't done anything. So even when we have a classical civilization all over Africa, and especially I'm referring to Egypt now, what do? They take it from us. They lift Africans out of Egypt out of Africa, and put it in some place called the Middle East. It's not in the middle of anything but their madness, right? It's Western Asia, right? So they take Africans out of Egypt out of Africa, and then Africa out of human history, right? But they don't want to give us credit for what we've done, right? And I think it's very important for us in gathering ourselves together again. As Malcolm said, coming to ourselves, and then learning ourselves, expanding our conception of ourselves, that we can do anything, and especially give homage to and do praise to all those bridges, beautiful, strong, sturdy bridges that did not break or bend. They carried us over and brought us to this place where we are. And I am grateful, forever grateful to each and all of them.
I want to just add something real quick to that, because, Carter G. Woodson said something else that I think is important. He said, if you can make a man feel that he's inferior, you don't have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. So the reason why studying our history, especially as Black people, is we can see how great we are. One of the things you talked about, Dr. Karenga, is talking about we need to celebrate those small victories every day.
That's right. Appreciate what you said. Thanks so much, Maurice, for that, about celebrating our victory. Because sometimes Black people might come into the conversation, listen to the established order, right? Is always doing propaganda. Honorable Marcus Garvey said that this propaganda, which really masquerades sometimes as education, is more dangerous to us than any other weapon, right? Because what it does is it kills us and we become walking dead, right? Rather than knowing what's happening to us, we actually might think what's happening to us is good. So some of us, not all of us, I don't condemn all Black people. I'm just saying that's a major problem we have to attend to. And so what we need to do is remember that Carter G. Woodson wanted us to do two things. And I got, he wanted our history to, number one, educate the white people so that they can stop being as savage toward us as they were and as ignorant of our history as they were. But they also wanted us to know it, to expand our conception of ourselves. We are world historical people, right?
Yes.
So we can't think of ourselves simply as ghetto people. Some of us live in the ghetto, but that doesn't define us in our wholeness. That's one of the diversities in our lives, right? We don't deny it. We don't put it down. In fact, for those people to live in a ghetto and survive and develop in the midst of the most inhuman treatment in a country that claims to be concerned about the dignity of human beings, about democracy, about freedom, about justice, about equality. For them to hear all that and see how they're living and not just fall out and go wild, right? That's a great achievement in itself, right? And I think it's very important for us to always praise our people and build on the best. Don't pretend we don't have faults. We don't need to do that, but we can't make it like it's genetic. That's the problem. Sometimes when we talk, because the oppressor gives us this pathological language, we talk as if the faults that we have, some of us have, is genetic, and it's not. It's not genetic. It's certainly environmental. It's just like, let's talk crime for a minute. Usually, some people who don't think about what they say, they'll call crime black. They say black on black crime. You don't ever hear people saying white on white crime. White people kill more white people than anybody else. I mean, they killed 40 million people in the First World War, Second World War, they killed 40 million plus. Nobody said, why are white people killing each other? They mainly killed other white people. Of course, they killed us too, right? But they killed us mainly in the colonial wars and imperial wars and conquest wars, right? But they killed each other fighting over things. And nobody attributes that to their race. When they have a mafia, Italian mafia, a Jewish mafia, a Russian mafia, a Polish mafia, they never say to the Jews, Poles, Italians, and Russians, y'all got to get yourself together. Y'all been here long enough to know you can't do that. They call that a national problem. They got a national statute for that. They got a national committee for that. They come to us, they call it a black problem. What's happening to y'all in the community? Every day we got to justify ourselves. But guess what? Crime is not black, it's American. When the people do wrong and they do crime, they don't do it as black people. They do it as criminals. They do it as American. That's the American way. America has founded this country in crime. It was a criminal act of genocide, right? That established this country. You can't just walk away from that. That's why the white people don't want critical theory. They don't even know what critical race theory is, but they don't want you to teach it because they don't want, as they said, to be made uncomfortable. They want to do wrong and feel good about it, right? Hey, comrade, you can't escape that. You're talking bad about everybody in the world. Look at yourself. Look at yourself. And so the reality is that we inside the belly of the beast have a moral responsibility to speak truth first to the people and then to power. Most time people say speak truth to power. No, you got to first speak truth to the people so that the people can join you in speaking truth to power. Back you up when you speak it and they come after you because they're going to come after you. I bear witness, right? They're going to come after you. And so I think it's very important for us to appreciate the beauty of our history. There is no history. I'm going to close with this. There is no history, no historical narrative more sacred than our own, nor people more holy or worthy of respect, right? Our life is a sacred text. Our lives are a sacred text. We have to realize that. And if we let somebody else convince us that we're lower than that, and that God would wait thousands of years, we're the first people in the world. God don't say nothing to us till white people come. Then he tell the white people, tell these people. Can we believe that if we stop to think? We got to stop to think. And if we stop to think, we are beautiful and sacred people. And we must honor that sacredness. And we must not do things to ourselves that violate this sacredness. And we must not let others do things to us that violate this sacredness. We're born free and in dignity, and we must struggle mightily and constantly to reaffirm, achieve, and sustain this.
Totally agree and concur with all your sentiments, Dr. Karenga. And what I'd like to just add on to it, your whole idea of how America became America, that They stole the land from the American Indians, and they made our ancestors work for free. So that's how America has become what America in terms of its status in the world today.
Right.
That they just stole, and it's that passive aggressive projection kind of behavior that the Caucasians have, that they projected on us, like saying that we're lazy, saying that, you know, that we steal, when in fact they're the ones that's doing all of that. They're just projecting on us what they do themselves. So that's the psychology that I gleaned from understanding like your whole purpose in talking about history and everything.
Yeah, but one of the major ones is that. But the major thing is not simply to critique the oppressor, but to praise the people.
Oh, yeah, right.
And to reaffirm us in our sacredness, our beauty, our goodness. And one of the things I want to say, and I appreciate what you said about what they did to the Native Americans, what they did to us, but you're talking softly about it. They didn't just steal the land. They committed genocide on people, right? The logic of settler colonialism is to destroy the people whose land you have appropriated, right? So that they no longer become a problem for you. So look at what they did to them. When the white men came to this country, there were at least, by conservative estimates, 16 million Native Americans. By 1800, there were 500,000. 15 million people just wiped out. People whose history we would never know, whose songs we would never hear, right? Whose art we would never see, because these people had the capacity to do it and didn't have the moral restraint not to. And look at what they did. They didn't just enslave us in the abstract. They committed Holocaust against us. And what is Holocaust? A morally monstrous act of genocide that is not only against a targeted people, but also a crime against humanity. And it expresses itself in ways that we have to understand. The morally monstrous destruction of human life. We don't know how many people. Let's say 10 million to 100 million. Let's take the lower figure. The loss of one life is a tragedy. How much more are millions of people destroyed and called trade? Listen to what they call the Holocaust, our Holocaust, right? I know people think that's a Jewish word. No, the Jewish word is Shoah. The Swahili word is Maangamizi, right? Some people say Maafa, but Maangamizi is better because it shows intentionality. Maafa could be an accident, but Maangamizi says intentional destruction, a massive destruction. The Ma is augmentative, and so it means massive destruction from the way I'm using it. So the first is the morally monstrous destruction of human life. The second, the morally monstrous destruction of human culture. The wiping out of cities and towns and villages, and wiping out great works of art, great literatures, right? Great music, all wiped out. And the people that made them wiped out. We don't even see some of the people that used to exist as a result of the Holocaust of enslavement. That's why we have to call it Holocaust. It's not just trade. Trade, that's like doing business. Somebody just trade one thing for another. You go in the store, put down something, take out something. Hey, have a good day. That's trade.
Right.
But to kill and wipe out millions.
Yes.
And then call it trade with collateral damage, business gone bad with collateral damage. That's the concept here. If you call that slave trade, it's business gone bad with collateral damage.
Right. Yes.
So how can we call millions collateral damage? This is Holocaust, right? And the third thing, so the first thing is morally monstrous destruction of human life. That's the first aspect of Holocaust. Second, the morally monstrous destruction of human culture, right? And then finally, great intellectual traditions were destroyed there, right? Different systems of knowledge, right? Literature destroyed. And then finally, the morally monstrous destruction of human possibility. Again, lifting us out of our own history and culture, attaching us to theirs, cutting out our mind, lifting out, our memory and replacing it with the filth of their own mind, right? That's a little bit more than just slavery. And that's why we don't say slave, we say enslaved person, because enslavement raises the question of who did it. And it also lets you know it's temporary, that it was imposed, it can be undone. But if you just slave, it looks like it's natural. And also you deny when you just say slave, You deny the humanity and identity of African people. Who else can you say the word slave and people think it's them?
Exactly.
Only with us.
Right.
That's
Yes.
part of the destruction of the human possibility to meet people as equals across the world so that people don't even know us, never been to this country, got an attitude about us because of racism and the Holocaust of enslavement, which was the womb, the distorted and infected womb that produced this. So
yes. And the story that circulates the world. Exactly.
yeah.
Charles, you had a question?
Yes, yes. Some argue that our struggle for racial and social justice is as urgent as ever. Does this mean that we have not progressed? And if not, why?
Well, we have progressed, right? And that's why we have to count our victory. I always tell this story. I like science fiction. And so there's an episode on the early Star Trek in which they go to a planet called Taylor's 4. And on this planet, the people can make you think you haven't done what you did. And these people in this country to make you think you haven't done what you did. They'll make you say, we ain't done nothing, right? But let's be honest and go back to the Holocaust of enslavement. When every day was rape and torture, butchery, slaughter, right? Separation, auction block. That's not here today, right? That's still killing, but it's a different kind. Rescue me if I'm wrong, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Subjected to everything. You're not even the same in segregation. That's a savage time, lynching on a regular basis. You can't even walk down the street and see white people not have to get over or bow your head or do some other thing so they can feel good. These are some sick people. They have to stand on our head in order to have height. They need to get tall. They don't need to, you don't try to destroy me. They don't have to erase me to be present. You know, come in with your own thing. If you're that bad, you don't have to make up things and you don't have to kill us and convince us to hate ourselves. As Minister Malcolm, Nana Malcolm, and Haji Malcolm said, you know, they made us hate ourselves from the top of our head to the soles of our feet. They problematized our hair. Listen to that. They problematized our nose. They problematized, made a problem out of our nose, out of our lips, out of our skin color, out of our legs, out of our genitals even, out of our buttocks, out of our feet, right? Hey, what's wrong with these people? What makes them think like that, right? That's why people can't get used to it. We were talking today, what the shock that people of color had. I teach a class in ethnic studies, and we were talking about what are the things that undermine our resistance effort was we took time to get used to a person that was waging total war against us. Right? It was hard for us to understand that after we had welcomed them, right? It was just too much. And even now, Black people, they will not criticize white people. If I talk like this, sometimes people say, well, I mean, why does he don't like white people? But if I talk like this about Black people, they say, yeah. That means, as Malcolm said, brainwashing. And that means that they have given us their values and removed our own. And it takes us back to one of the points I made earlier. One of the greatest powers in the world is the power to define reality and make others accept it, even when it's to their disadvantage. And so we have to struggle against that. I said in the 60s, I have not changed. The battle we're fighting, the critical battle we're fighting, first and foremost, is the battle to win the hearts and minds of our people. If we lose that battle, we cannot hope to win any other.
Yes. Well, do you think that the culture to heal ourselves and as well as to heal our culture, do you think that we need to become more aware of white fragility as opposed to white supremacy?
Yeah, well, appreciate what you said, if I understand correctly. One of the things we have to do is to avoid making white people the subject of all our sentences. Even when we criticize them, if we're not careful, they still dominate our conversation.
Okay.
What I would like for us to ask ourselves is, what is our goals? Our goals is to defeat white supremacy, white racism, white domination, deprivation, and degradation of us. In the final analysis, white supremacy is the will and practice of domination, deprivation, and degradations of others different and vulnerable, especially Black people. So there's three aspects to it: domination, deprivation, and degradation. They want to control all of us, not just our bodies, but our minds and our hearts, our sentiment. They need that. They want us to, like a rapist, asking the victim, do you love me? Say you like it, right? They want us to love our oppression. They want us to love them even as they abuse us, right? That's the oppressor, all oppressors, right? Then the second thing is deprivation. Look at the poverty. Millions and millions of people impoverished in this country unnecessarily, and Black people at the bottom. Only people even compared to us are the Native Americans. Certainly the Latinos also, but it's on a different level. Native American on every index is lower, and we have to acknowledge that. And we have to get away from saying enslavement, the Holocaust of enslavement is the first sin of this country. That's wrong. If there's sin, the first sin is a genocide against the Native American, right? That happened before we got here, right?
Yes.
We have to be strong enough to say that without feeling it takes something from us, right?
Right.
Certainly what they did to us is Holocaust, and we're not going to deny that, but we don't have to stand on somebody else's head in order to get hype like our oppressor does, right? Our oppressor cannot be our teacher. So there's a deprivation to that, a deprivation of our rights. Look at how they're trying to deprive us of our rights to vote, even after talking about democracy and about how we wouldn't vote before, right? They used to always say, oh, we don't vote and all that. And now we want to vote, they want to stop us. They don't like what we do with our vote, how we make choices. They want to tell us. If we look for the Aryan hand and everything, and if they can get into it, they'll make it thrive, and they'll make you think the only group worth talking about is this one group that they like. Just think about that, right?
Oh, yes.
They have favorite groups, right? And so I think it's very, and the next thing they work on degrading us, talking about how ugly we are, how we don't do this, don't do that, how we can't learn. Well, you know, they've spent a lot of time trying to keep us from actually appreciating our beauty and our sacredness and our goodness, right? And tried to make us feel we're ugly when in fact we're beautiful people, right? That's why we said to them right out, Black is beautiful, comrade.
Right,
You know, you got to get yourself together, you know? You're looking for a tan. You're trying to put stuff in your behind, back of your chest.
Right.
Yeah. You trying to do this. You got to put some stuff in your lips. You know something's happening there. Hey,
that's right.
I understand it, you know? Yeah. So, but you don't have to stand on my head. I tell my class, every culture and people is a unique and equally valid and valuable way of being human in the world. I repeat, each people and culture, every people and culture is a unique and equally valid and valuable way of being human in the world. I'm an African. This is my way of being human in the world. It's unique. It's equally valid and valuable, right? I'm an African American. I talk Ebonics in my class. I tell them, I'm talking Ebonics. I want you the Asians and you Latinos to stop feeling funny because you got an accent. The white man got an accent, right? He really doesn't talk British English, even though that's the original English, right? So he got an accent. He got an accent in the South. He got an accent in the Bronx. He got an accent in Brooklyn, right? He got an accent all over. They never say that's a problem with them. You got to get rid of that in order to get a job, right? I said, I'm talking Ebonics. You don't understand what I'm saying? Just ask me. I translate, right? But I speak from a rule-governed speech, right? That's what language is, rule-governed speech. I say flow. I take off the R on the end, right? That's what I do. I turn my THs into F. I say roof for roof, and I say roof for the house roof. You know what I'm saying? That's me, but it's governed. I say it every time. It's not like I miss sometime, right? So I think it's very important for us to develop the intellectual foundation for our resistance to this man, the intellectual foundation, the structural foundation. And finally, we have to struggle. I hear you mention, and I don't want to get past it, I hear you mention the word heal. And there's a lot of conversations about Black people here. But I want to end on a beautiful note and show you how consistent Kawaida philosophy, my philosophy, which is an ongoing synthesis of the best of African thought and practice in constant exchange with the world. And this is the philosophy out of which I created Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba. Kawaida argues that we are wounded physicians.
Yes.
Who must heal ourselves, repair, renew, and remake ourselves in the process and practice of repairing, renewing, and remaking the pathological world, especially the pathological society that made us sick. We live in a society that's pathological and pathogenic. Pathological means it's sick. Pathogenic means it creates sick people.
Oh.
And so we cannot escape vulnerability. You know, I have to wear my mask, and I go out of the lessons, I have to, because people are crazy out there. They won't wear the mask. They keep talking about freedom. They don't talk about measles and smallpox. They done got there, and they're going to get that again, right? So I know this is Trumpism. This is what's sad about this. I don't want to get off wounded physician, though. I got to get back to that. But listen to this.
Okay.
We are wounded physicians. Why do I say we're wounded? We know that we're wounded, but we don't want to simply be victims. We want to also be healers of ourselves.
Yes.
We want to be people who can repair ourselves, renew ourselves, remake ourselves in the process and practice of repairing, renewing, and remaking this pathological society, this pathogenic society. And I think that if you ask, how do we heal ourselves? We heal ourselves always through three things: our moral sensitivities, caring and loving each other, caring for. And sometimes I use love, but I don't use it as much as the Christians use it, because sometimes, especially if it comes from the Democratic society, it's really a screen for getting away from doing things, right? Let's all talk love. Well, no, we have to talk wealth, we have to talk power, and we have to tell status. If people don't help you improve your wealth, your power, and your status in this country, they don't care about you. So I want us to care for each other. I want us to love each other, like Malcolm said. We got to love each other, right? He said, but we need to know each other. Sometimes we think being Black is knowing Black, right? Feeling pain don't make you a doctor. Coming to your own conclusion don't make you a philosopher, right? Yes. We got to think and we got to practice, right? So in the final analysis, practice proves and makes possible everything. So we got to do caring acts for each other. That's how we know we care. We got to do loving acts for each other. We got to build our structures. We got to reinforce our institutions that exist and build new ones that house our aspirations and advance our interests as a people. And we have to struggle. I'm from the Fanonian school. None of Franz Fanon, one of the great minds of the 20th century and for all time, taught that we heal ourselves in the process and practice of transforming the pathological society that causes sickness in us. We've got to fight against the society. We cannot let them do things to us and we not respond. It makes us sicker and sicker. I saw one time on one of the notes in the conversation you had about epigenetics, and that's the point here is the environmental factors that actually contribute to us losing will, losing focus. When we go to school up into the third grade, we're brilliant, we're sharp and fast, but they beat us down by the third grade, right? And hand us a white dog and teach us to appreciate it. I'm telling you now. So we have to do a wall of warmth around each other, right? We have to, especially in this COVID time, we have to develop new choreographies of closeness, right? We got to develop new rhythms of life and love and care and visitations and embracing, right? And helping, right? And consoling, right? We've got to do that. We got to go to the best of our culture, Black culture, right? The world, hey, the world is looking for something from us as Fanon said, something other than an obscene caricature of Europe. He said, let us leave Europe behind that are always talking about man, but wherever they find him, they kill him, right? What we need to do, he said, is to think, reach inside of ourselves, invent, develop, imagine, radically imagine a new world and struggle to bring it into being and to set afoot a new man and woman to inhabit that world, develop that world, and leave it, we say in Kawaida, leave it as a legacy worthy of the name and history African.
Well, Dr. Karenga, I want to thank you. Charles Ored, I want to thank you for joining us on Black Men Screaming. As we like to say, stand up, speak up, scream if you have to. Thank you for all those people that joined us. Take care. God bless.